everyone, welcome back to my channel Econ Vision by your teaching buddy. I am back with another video which is in continuation to my last video for class 12 macroeconomics chapter number 2 national income. Right, in last video we discussed about different type of goods we have in our economy and what is the difference between stock and a flow concept. Then we discussed about gross investment, we discussed about net investment, we discussed the concept of depreciation. Now as you all are aware about the basic of the macroeconomics, so we can move forward with the topics which is an actual national income part. Right now, if you have not watched my first video, the type of goods, do go watch those video. I'll put up in the link in the description box for the last video. Okay, so let's continue with the today's topic, that is circular flow of income and its method of calculating national income. Right, as the name suggests, that is circular flow of income. According to you, what it will be? It is basically how your income is circulating and coming back to you, right? How there is a flow of income in an economy, how your income is someone's expenditure and someone else's expenditure is your income. This particular topic will basically tell you this only, that how the circle of income flows in an economy and how the leakages happen and how our economy works and what are the different steps that helps us to calculate the national income. We'll be able to find out from this, right? Before starting it with this, I wanted to know, in microeconomics we studied about factor of production. I hope everyone might have remembered that things. There were four factors of production, that were land, labor, capital and entrepreneurship. Right, these were the four factors of production that if you want to produce anything, whether you want to produce goods or whether you want to produce services, you need these four factors. Right, so these were factor of productions. Right, now in macroeconomics you have factor payments also. This we discussed in the last video also when we were discussing about revenue cost part in microeconomics, but for I am recapping it for you because it will be useful in this particular topic. Now, against land we used to get rent, right? Against labor we used to get wages, against capital we used to get interest, and against entrepreneurship we used to get profit. Right, do remember these things, that these are the factor services, or you can say the factor of production, and these are the factor payments which will be received if you provide these services. If you are providing someone your land to be used, then you will be charging some rent against it. If you are providing your labor services to someone, that will be providing you some wages. If someone is giving you an idea about your company, how you should run, or any business step, then this whatever the profit that will be getting is the basically the payment in return of providing your entrepreneurship. Right, now the second thing which you need to know for this particular topic is that in an economy there are different components. Right, in microeconomic we studied there were basically three components, that were consumption, production and investor. So same in the macroeconomics also, we have different type of economies where different component get worked into. Right, we have two sector economy, we have three sector economy, we have four sector economy, and we have five sector economy. In two sector economy we have household, production. Production can be termed as a firm also in your book. In three sector economy these two factors are same, that is household and production, plus we have government. In four sector all the three factors, household, production and government, plus external world. Right, in five sector economy we have financial institutions, but this five sector economy is not in your syllabus. It only asks about the components, that how many components and which components do we have in five sector. You might get it in your book in your power booster parts. If you are using TR Jain and Sandeep Garg, then you will be getting in your power boosters, and in NCRT you will be getting at an end page about the 5 sectors. And these 5 sectors are household, production, government, external world, that is the rest of the world, and financial institutions. You will not be asked to explain the circular flow amongst them, right? Okay, let's move to circular flow in a very simple economy, that is two sector economy. And it is a closed economy, because we are not dealing it with the rest of the world. Two sector economy and three sector economy are the closed economy, because we are dealing with the domestic part, we are not dealing it with the external world, right? In two sector economy we have two things: one is in household part, and second is firms, that are production part, right? Now, here there are two things. First is your goods market, and second is your factor market. Now, listen it very carefully to understand the circular flow. Household provides is factor services. What does factor services comes as? Factor services are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. These are factor services which is provided by household to firms, because as an household you will be having rent, which land which you will be renting the other firms to work on. As an household you will be the laborers in the firms. You will be the one who will be investing your money in firms to gain profit, and you will be the one who will be providing the business idea to the firms, right? As an household you provide factor services to the firm, and in return part you get factor payments. Once you provided your factor services, you get factor payment in return, that are rent, wages, profit, as well as an interest, right? This was your factor market. Now if I talk about the goods market, now after providing these four factor of productions, some goods and services will be produced. You might be producing car, machinery, buildings, pen, paper, table, anything. Or you will be providing your services as in teacher, doctor, CA, advocate, anything any services which you will be providing. Like the firms will be providing you the goods and services, and you will be spending your money to avail these goods and services, right? How you will be spending on them? If you want to purchase a car, you will be spending money to purchase a car, and you will be providing it to the production factor. You want to buy a pen, you will go to a firm, you will go to a shopkeeper or any production part to gain that thing, so you will be spending to buy that, right? So did you understand the circular flow which is happening here? You are the one who is providing factor services, and you are getting the factor payment in return against your services which you provide. The complete and the final goods is provided by the firms to an household in the form of goods and services, and you are the one who is spending over it, right? Now, this is a two sector economy where no leakages are there. Now, what does this word leakage means? Leakage is something whenever you try to move some amount of money out of this circle. Now, if there is no leakages, suppose the government's revenue, suppose the firm's revenue is 1,000, so your income will also be 1,000, because you will be providing your services, you will be receiving the payment, firm will be providing your goods and services, and you will be spending, so you both will be going to have the same income. But if there are leakages, now what does leakages means? In macroeconomics, savings are known as leakages. Why? Suppose firm has 1,000 rupees as an income, they provided you the factor payment as in 1,000 rupees. Now as the household part, to maintain the budget, what you did, you only spent 800 rupees and you saved 200 rupees for your future part, for some emergency. Now as an household you will be spending only 800 rupees, you won't be giving 1,000 because you have saved 200 rupees. Now in the second cycle, Firm only has 800 rupees as its income because 200 you have taken out of this circle, right? Now what firm will do, because he has already spent 1000 rupees as the factor payment, firm is in loss of 200 because of you, because you have taken out 200 out of this circle. So firm will increase the prices of these goods and services, and you have to spend your money back. So what happened, every time you take some of the income out of this circle, this increases the prices of goods and services, which create inflation in the market, right? If there are no leakages in this circle, then the income for the firm and income for the households are going to remain same, right? And what do you mean by, there is a word called injections, which you might have studied in chapter number 1. That word injections basically means is investing back into the firm with the same amount which you have saved. Suppose this 200 rupees you invested on a land, and you are now getting rent over it, right? What you did, you created a leakage in the first circle, but you injected that 200 again in the second cycle. That will automatically inject the income into the circular flow, and you will be back with the track. So these are the two important things, that is leakages and injections, which you need to remember. Now, this was a very simple economy of two sector, that is firm as an household, right? Now let's talk about one more thing. Now three sector, which is a part of your syllabus. In that you have household, you have firm, and you have government, right? Households provide factor services, firm provide factor payment, right? We have understood this in the above diagram, which I recently discussed it with you. And the other part also, that firms gives you goods and services, and household spends, right? Now what is the relation between household to the government and firm to the government? We need to understand this. Let me make it once more: household, firm, and government. Now you have to pay some taxes to the government, maybe an house tax, maybe water tax, electricity bill, road tax, anything. Household provides taxes to the government, and government provide services in the form of subsidies, like cylinder subsidies you get, some other subsidies like Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan type subsidies you get, education loan you get on the 0% rate of interest. That is a kind of a subsidy you get, right? So the relation between household and the government is of taxes and subsidies. And same with the firm part also. Firm also have to pay some of the taxes to the government, and government also provides some subsidies to the firm, like in the form of if they are using organic things, they will get 5% subsidies. If they are using some chemicals, they have to pay more taxes. If they are using paper bags, they will be get subsidies to this much, or some commercial subsidies they get, right? So the bond of household to the government and the firm to the government is of taxes and subsidies, right? And if we talk about the fourth sector economy, in that external factor, it comes as an open economy, because we are dealing with the external world, which we will talk in our next chapter. We are not going to discuss in this particular chapter, right? Have you understood these things, two sector economy and three sector economy? Okay, let's move forward. Now, as according to this particular figure, you might have understood this thing, that if there are no leakages and injection in an economy, then someone's income and someone's expenditure both should be same, right? Your income is someone's else expenditure, and someone else expenditure is your income, right? This is the thing we have understood. Now, while calculating the national income, there are now I get two ways. If I calculate the income for everyone in one financial year, then also I am going to get the national income. And if I am going to calculate the expenditure part for everyone during one financial year, then also I'll be getting the national income, right? So these two are basically the methods of national income. We are calculating either on the income part or on the expenditure part. Both should be same, right? The national income which we are getting on the income part and which we are going to get on the expenditure part should be same. Income part national income should be same as an expenditure part. We have proved it by this particular circular flow of income in a simple economy, that our income is someone else's expenditure and someone else's income is our expenditure, right? Okay, let's move forward. There is one another method other than income and an expenditure method, that is your value added method, right? Now, this income and expenditure part is hypothetically known as macroeconomic model until and unless there are leakages and injections in this particular thing, right? This is a functional of an imaginary economy, because we know that it is never possible that an household do not save even a single penny of its income, and a firm, whatever income they are getting, they spend completely. They also save, they take out their profit, they give it to their investors, they take out some of their money out of it. So it is never possible that complete flow of income is working in an economy, right? So this is an imaginary economy which is known as a macroeconomic model. Let's move to the value added method. I'll be discussing only a single method here. I'll be discussing the next two methods in the other videos, right? Now what does this value added method means? I'll start this method with one example. Okay, in this example I have three chains. This is chain A, this is chain B, this is chain C. Chain A is a farmer. Chain A is a farmer. Chain B is a baker. Chain C is a shopkeeper. And then you have one last person as a consumer, right? Now, farmer produces a wheat of 100 rupees, right? It sells to the baker for 100 rupees, and baker make a bread out of it, and he used some of its ingredients, some of its milk, sugar, everything, and now the baker is costed as in 150 rupees to it, right? Now this baker sell this to a shopkeeper for 200 rupees, right? What value is added here? Value is added here is 50. Baker added, now farmer added a value for 100 rupees, baker added a value for 50 rupees, shopkeeper added its value for 50 rupees because he is getting for 200 rupees, right? Now this shopkeeper sell it to a consumer for 250 rupees. Shopkeeper also added the value for 50 rupees, right? Farmer got produces it for 100 rupees, he sell it for 100 rupees. Now this particular baker added its value for 50 rupees as a transportation cost or something. He made it for 150 rupees, but he sells to the shopkeeper for 200 rupees. So what does baker added here is, baker added here is 50 rupees. Now the shopkeeper sell it to consumer for 50 rupees, he also gets his value added for 50 rupees. Now there are two ways to calculate the national income. Either we calculate this 250 rupees as a final output which a consumer is getting, or we should add the value which which is added at an every step. Like if I added 100, 150, 200 and 250, so value added is also 250 and the final output is also 250. But there is one common mistake which sometimes we do in calculating the national income. We consider this as in final goods like 100 rupees, 150, 200, and 250. Now, if we calculate this as in final value, then 100, 150, 200, and 250. How much national income is there now? 0, 10, 1, 2, 3, 3 and 4 is 7. Total 700 national income is there, but actually the national income is only for 250 rupees. Now it creates confusion and it gives us misleading results if we are using at an every step. There are two ways to calculate, either to use the final output or either to use only the value which has been added at an each step. Just remember this particular example to understand the value added process, right? Here also an example of baker is only given. If you are using TR Jain and Sandeep Garg, you will also get an example of such kind, baker and particularly a farmer part, which we'll be discussing about these things, right? This is a value added way. Value added is basically how much value a particular one is adding to uh, like sell it to a next person. Like if a farmer is selling cost 100 rupees and he is selling for 150 to a baker, and baker cost 150 but it's selling for the 200 rupees, and then shopkeeper added for 200 rupees as in cost but giving at it 250. So what does it added? 100 and 150, 50 rupees added here, 50 added here, 50 added here, plus 100 rupees as in cost for the farmer which was added. So 150 total added here, right? So 150 plus 50 plus 50, that gives you 250. Either to add value added or either to take only the final output which is at an end result to the consumer. Both the things will remain the same, right? This is a value added method, but there is lot of more things need to be remembered here. Is that is, you have understood the concept of depreciation which we discussed in the last video, right? It is a way where normal and wear and tears happen. Now this depreciation is also known as the consumption of fixed capital. Please remember this word, consumption of fixed capital is actually just a depreciation part, right? Now, if we calculate the monetary value of all the final outputs during one financial year, we get as in gross value added, right? Gross value added, that is GVA, right? That is gross value added, the total value which is added during a financial year. If we have to make it as a net, then what we do is we subtract the depreciation part to get net NVA, that is net value added, right? Depreciation can be anything, normal wear and tear of an uh, basically machineries or anything, right? Now the next concept that comes in a value added method is an inventory part. Now, what does inventory basically means? In an economy, the stock of unsold finished or a semi-finished good or a raw material which a firm carries for 1 year to the next year is called inventories, right? And inventory is a stock concept. What does stock concept means? Which is calculated at a point of time. How inventory is in stock concept? Now, you are a person who is owning a company, and if I ask you to go in your godown and check how many units of stocks do you have right now, then you will be able to calculate that is 1000, 10,000. Will it going to be changed in the next minute? No, the stock will remain the same. If you have 1000 unit at an like suppose 11 p.m., then you will be going to have 1000 unit at 12 p.m. also. The stock is not going to change every minute or within every point of time, right? So we can able to calculate the inventory at a point of time. So that is known as the stock, that's why it is known as the stock concept. But when we are talking about the change in inventories, we need to calculate over a period of time, because change can not happen just in 1 minute. We need to calculate the change in inventory in 1 week, in 1 month, or in 1 year. That's why the change in inventories are known as the flow concept, because inventories can be changed over a period of time, so it is known as the flow concept. Now, Inventory is also treated as in capital because it is one of the type of an investment you have made, whether you have bought a raw material, semi-finished good, finished goods, or an just random things you have invested. So they are known as your one of the investments, right? Now, inventories are of two type. They can be planned and unplanned, right? Planned and unplanned, two type of inventories can be there, and planned inventories can be accumulated or deaccumulated, and unplanned also can be accumulated as well as deaccumulated, right? So we have unplanned accumulation of an inventories and unplanned deaccumulation of an inventories. First we'll study about an unplanned one, then we'll study about an planned one. What does unplanned inventories basically means is, right? Suppose you are an owner of a firm A and you decided that there will be the sale of 1,000 shirts during our one financial year. Suppose in 2026 you will be able to sell 1,000 shirts. But what happened, due to some of the reasons you were only able to sell 800 shirts. Now these 200 shirts are extra for you now. These are the part of your inventories. Unknowingly your inventories got raised up. This wasn't planned, because planning was to sell 1,000, but 1,000 shirts does not got sold, so you got an increase of 200 shirt in your inventories. That is known as unplanned deaccumulation of an inventories, which give rise to your inventories, right? Now take the another scenario. You thought of selling 1,000 shirts, but some or due to some of the reason and your sales got increased and you were able to sell around, suppose, 150 shirts. Now where this 50 shirts will come from? Your inventory part, right? Now what happened, your your 50 inventories got accumulated. Your 50 shirts got accumulated basically means is, from inventories you will be able to sell more shirts. So your 50 shirts got sold from inventories. That means accumulated basically means used up. So decrease in your inventories means accumulation, and increase in your inventories basically means deaccumulation. So unplanned part is something which is not planned. You were not planned, you haven't planned that your 200 shirts will be left unsold. So your inventories will get rised up, so deaccumulation will be there. There will be a rise in an inventories. But in some time the inventories got used up, so that is accumulation of an inventories, unplanned. But sometimes you plan these things also, like you know that there will be only sales of 1,000 shirts. You know that there will be the sales of 1,000 shirts, but you still produced 1,100 shirts. Now, according to your prediction, only 1,000 shirts got sold. This 100 shirts got left unsold. Now, this increased your inventories. So, it means this was planned deaccumulation of inventories, because you already knew that only 1,000 shirts will be sold, but you yourself produce 1,100. So this 100 shirts is an planned deaccumulation of an inventories, right? Now, you know, in the second scenario, you know that there is a sale of only 100 shirts, but you still produced 900 shirts. According to your prediction, the sale is still 1,000, so you have to take these 100 shirts from your inventories. So that was planned accumulation of an inventories, because you know that there will be the sale of 1,000 shirts, but you still produce only 900, right? This is an important question which comes of around 3 marks, in which you have to explain what is inventories, its type of inventories. You need one example. You can take one example and you can explain all the four scenarios with this only one example. No need to take different example for all the four parts. You can explain it with one single example with all parts. It would be more than enough for you for 3 marks in your board exams to write a correct answer. The structure need to be like this: first to explain the part of an inventories, what is inventories, then the part of inventories. While explaining the parts of inventories, first start with an example and then start explaining all the 4 parts with the same example, right? Taking the different scenarios. As you have understood about the planned, unplanned, and planned accumulated inventories, planned deaccumulated inventories, let's come to our value added method. Now what does this value added method says? We have taken in consideration about the change in inventories. Now how does we able to calculate the GAV for one form? That is, first is the gross value added of final outputs. Final outputs basically means the your revenue part which you have after selling it, plus your change in inventories, because your inventories is a part of an investment. You have invested, so the investment will come into a change in inventories minus your intermediary cost, value of an intermediary goods that you are using. You're not going to use those intermediary goods because we have already taken about the final output, right? So calculating the national income with the value added method is something like this: GAV is the output, which is a final one, final output, plus change in inventories minus that is intermediary goods, right? So this is a formula for calculating the GAV for one firm. We calculate this thing for all the firms with like GAV1, GAV2, GAV3, as many firms we have in our economy, and then we just club it down and then we get the answer for the gross value added, which is equals to your GDP. Now your GVA, which is in summation for all firms, is equals to GDP. If you need to find it for the net part, then what we do, from gross value added we just subtract the depreciation part and we get the answer for NVA, that is the net value added. So that will be equals to your NDP, that is national domestic product, right? So GAV for all the firms is equals to GDP, that is gross domestic product. Gross domestic product does the sum total of gross value for all the firm in an economy, right? Now here the value added methods get end. I'll be discussing about some practical questions of all the 3 methods together. First I'll be discussing about the methods only. So if you still have a doubt, you can ask in a comment box. Do watch the first video, then watch this continuation video, so you will be aware about what we are discussing and what is the relation between to the first video, because it will be very difficult for you to understand which goods are intermediary, which are final, how to calculate it, which need to be added, which do not need to be added. So these things will make you little bit confused. So thank you for watching the video. If you still have a doubt, do comment it down and I'll get it solved in by that minute only. Thank you so much.